My wife's lawyer said, "My client is the only stable parent." My mother-in-law smiled from the gallery. "That boy needs his mother. His father is worthless." The judge nodded. Then my daughter walked to the bench. "Your Honor, can I read what Mommy and Grandma text about me?" She held up my wife's old phone. My wife stood up screaming. The courtroom fell silent. Before we begin, please subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin. Mitch Myers stood in the doorway of his daughter's bedroom, watching her sleep with her worn stuffed rabbit clutched against her chest. The nightlight cast soft shadows across Kara's face, and for a moment, everything felt normal. Like the past 6 months hadn't happened. Like his wife hadn't moved out. Like his world hadn't been systematically dismantled piece by piece. He pulled the door closed with a soft click and walked down the hallway of the house he'd built with his own hands. Every beam, every floor plank, every carefully fitted joint represented hours of work. He designed it specifically for his family. Kara's bedroom faced east, so she'd wake to morning sunlight. The kitchen had the wide island where they'd made pancakes together every Sunday. The workshop in the garage where he taught her sand would smooth and measure twice, cut once. Mitch ran his hand along the banister he'd carved from reclaimed oak, feeling the familiar grain beneath his calluses. At 36, his hands told the story of his profession. A custom furniture maker who'd built a modest but respected business from nothing. While other kids in his neighborhood had gone to college, Mitch had apprenticed with old Jerome Lowe, a master craftsman who taught him that creating something lasting required patience, precision, and vision. The living room was too quiet. Dawn had taken the television, the nice speakers, half the furniture. She'd left the couch, the one they'd picked out together 8 years ago, the one where Kara had taken her first steps using the armrest for balance, the one where they told Kara they loved her every single night before bed. Mitch poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey and sat in the darkness. His phone buzzed. A text from his brother, Leroy. "How's Kara doing with the new schedule?" New schedule. That's what the temporary custody arrangement had become. Dawn got Kara Monday through Thursday. Mitch got Friday through Sunday and alternating Wednesdays. The new schedule meant he saw his daughter less than half the time, and each handoff was a fresh wound. He didn't answer Leroy. Instead, Mitch opened his photo gallery, scrolling through images of better days. Kara's 7th birthday party in the backyard. The 3 of them at the state fair. Dawn smiling at him. Genuinely smiling, not the cold, calculated expression she wore now. The change had been gradual, then sudden. 2 years ago, Dawn had reconnected with her mother, Gloria Black, after a decade of limited contact. Gloria was a force of nature, a real estate mogul who controlled half the commercial properties in their mid-sized Virginia city. When Dawn was growing up, Gloria had been absent, building her empire while Dawn's father raised her. After the divorce, Gloria had tried to buy her way back into Dawn's life with gifts and opportunities. Mitch had supported the reconnection. He'd even been glad for it. Dawn had struggled with her mother's abandonment, and he'd hoped healing that relationship would help Dawn find peace. Instead, Gloria had found a weak point and exploited it. It started with criticism disguised as concern. "Dawn, you're wasting your potential staying home with Kara. You have a business degree." Then came the job offer, a position managing one of Gloria's properties, flexible hours, excellent pay. Dawn had been excited. Mitch had been supportive. The job became 60-hour weeks. Gloria's mentorship became daily phone calls, lunches, weekend strategy sessions. Dawn started dressing differently, talking differently. She joined Gloria's gym, started seeing Gloria's hairdresser, adopted Gloria's dismissive way of speaking about people she considered beneath her, including Mitch. 6 months ago, Mitch had come home early from a job site to find Dawn in bed with Travis Kent, her executive life coach, a pretentious fraud who charged wealthy women $300 an hour to tell them they deserved better than their current lives. Mitch had stood in the doorway of his own bedroom, in the house he'd built, and watched his marriage detonate. Dawn hadn't even had the decency to look ashamed. She'd simply pulled on Travis's dress shirt and told Mitch they needed to talk. The talk had lasted 5 minutes. Dawn wanted a divorce. She'd already consulted a lawyer. She'd be moving in with Gloria temporarily. She wanted primary custody of Kara because Mitch's income was unstable and his work hours unpredictable. She needed Mitch to move out of the house for Kara's stability. Mitch had refused to leave. The house was in his name, built on land his grandfather had left him. Dawn had moved out the next day, taking Kara with her. The custody battle had begun immediately. The whiskey burned going down, but it didn't touch the cold fury that had taken root in Mitch's chest. He'd spent 6 months watching Dawn and Gloria work the system, manipulate narratives, and poison his relationship with his daughter. They had money, connections, and a ruthlessness he was only beginning to understand. But Mitch had spent 20 years working with wood, learning that the strongest structures required careful planning, patience, and the ability to see 10 steps ahead. You didn't build a cathedral in a day. You laid the foundation, placed each stone with purpose, and trusted that the architecture would hold. He was building something now. Gloria and Dawn just didn't know it yet. The handoff happened at McDonald's, neutral territory suggested by Dawn's lawyer. Mitch arrived 10 minutes early and ordered Kara's favorite, chicken nuggets and apple slices. She came through the door holding Dawn's hand, her small backpack decorated with butterflies bouncing against her shoulders. "Daddy!" Kara's face lit up, and she started to run toward him, but Dawn held her hand firm. "Kara, what did we discuss about transitions?" Dawn's voice was gentle, but Mitch heard the steel underneath. She'd been coaching Kara, he knew, teaching her to be wary of him, to report back on his apartment, his moods, his parenting. "I know, Mommy." Kara's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. She hugged Mitch, but he felt her hesitation. Dawn stood back, immaculate in designer athleisure that probably cost more than Mitch's monthly insurance payment. Her mother's influence showed in every detail. The perfect ballet-age highlights, the subtle but expensive jewelry, the way she held herself like she was doing Mitch a favor by allowing him to see his own daughter. "She needs to be back by 6 on Sunday. Don't be late this time." Dawn's tone was clipped. "I was 3 minutes late because of an accident on Route 29. I texted you." Excuses don't help Kara feel secure. Dawn glanced at her phone. "Regina says inconsistency is harmful to children during transitions." Regina Roth, Dawn's lawyer, a shark who specialized in taking fathers to the cleaners. Mitch had researched her. 83% success rate in securing primary custody for mothers, known for aggressive tactics and courtroom theatrics. "I'll have her back at 6. Mitch kept his voice level. Getting angry would just give Dawn ammunition. Everything was ammunition now. Dawn bent down to Kara's level. "Be good for Daddy. Remember what we talked about. I'll see you Sunday night, and then we have that spa day on Monday. Just you and me and Grandma Gloria." "Okay, Mommy." Kara hugged her mother, and Dawn held on just a beat too long. A performance of maternal devotion designed to make Mitch feel like an intruder in his own daughter's life. Then Dawn was gone, and Mitch was left with 3 days to undo 4 days of careful manipulation. "So," Mitch said, sliding the nuggets across to Kara, "tell me everything. How is school? How's Mr. Whiskers?" Kara nibbled an apple slice, her face cautiously brightening. "Mr. Whiskers learned a new trick. In an art class, I made you something, but I left it at Grandma's house. We can get it next time." "What kind of trick?" For the next hour, Kara chattered about her week, her teacher, her friends, the chapter book she was reading. Mitch listened to every word, filing away details, watching for signs of distress. She seemed okay, resilient, but there were moments when her smile faltered, when she paused like she was editing herself. He noticed it increasing over the past 2 months. Kara was learning to perform for both parents, to tell each what they wanted to hear. It was breaking Mitch's heart. Mitch's apartment was a temporary solution, a 2-bedroom unit in a complex near his workshop. It wasn't much, definitely not the custom-built home, but he'd made Kara's room special. He'd built her a loft bed with a slide, painted clouds on the ceiling, filled the shelves with her favorite books. "Movie night?" he suggested after dinner. "Can we watch the one with the dragon?" Kara was already pulling her favorite blanket from the couch. They settled in together, and for a few hours, everything was right. Kara fell asleep against his shoulder halfway through, her breathing deep and even. Mitch carried her to bed, tucked her in with the rabbit she'd had since she was 2. In the kitchen, he checked his phone. A text from Luke Lynn, his lawyer. Trial date confirmed. 3 weeks. We need to meet Monday to prep. How's Kara? Luke was good. A former public defender who'd gone into family law after watching too many decent parents get destroyed by the system. He was honest, strategic, and significantly cheaper than Regina Roth. But he'd been candid with Mitch from the beginning. They were the underdog. Dawn had the money, the mother advantage, and a character assassination campaign already in motion. Mitch texted back, "She's good. I'll be there Monday," bringing the documentation we discussed. He pulled out his laptop and opened the encrypted folder he'd been building for 3 months. Evidence. Patterns. A careful, methodical case against Dawn and Gloria that went far beyond he said, she said. Mitch had learned early in his career that the best furniture came from understanding the materials, respecting the grain, and never rushing the process. He'd applied the same philosophy to this situation. While Dawn had been playing the victim, filing motions, and painting him as an unstable father, Mitch had been quietly observing, documenting, and building. He wasn't just fighting for custody anymore. He was building a trap, piece by careful piece. And Dawn and Gloria were walking right into it. Sunday evening arrived too fast. Mitch drove Kara back to Gloria's mansion, a sprawling colonial in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, complete with a circular driveway and professionally landscaped gardens. Gloria had bought it after her divorce, a monument to her success and independence. Dawn was waiting on the porch, Gloria standing behind her like a sentinel. Right on time, Gloria said, checking her watch. Wonders never cease. Mitch ignored the dig. "Hey, Kara Bear. I'll see you Friday, okay?" "Okay, Daddy." Kara hugged him, whispering in his ear, "I love you. I love you too. So much." He watched her walk up the steps, her small hand finding Dawn's. Gloria's expression was triumphant, smug. She'd won this round, like she won every round. In 3 weeks, she expected to win the war. Mitch got back in his truck, a F-150 he'd had since he was 20, and drove away. In his rearview mirror, Gloria's mansion glowed like a fortress. But every fortress had weaknesses. You just had to know where to look, and Mitch had been looking very carefully. He made one stop on the way home, the storage unit he'd rented under his brother Leroy's name. Inside, protected in a climate-controlled environment, was the insurance policy, the thing that would change everything. Mitch unlocked the unit and looked at the small cardboard box on the shelf. Inside was a Samsung Galaxy phone, 3 years old, with a cracked screen and a dead battery. Dawn's old phone, the one she'd upgraded from last year and thrown in a junk drawer forgotten. The one Mitch had quietly retrieved when he'd gone back to the house to pick up the last of his things. The one that still had 18 months of text messages between Dawn and Gloria. Messages they'd thought were deleted. Messages they'd never imagined anyone would see. Messages that revealed exactly who they were beneath the performance of perfect mother and devoted grandmother. Mitch closed the unit and drove home. 3 weeks until trial. 3 weeks until he executed the plan he'd been building since the day Dawn walked out. In carpentry, there was a saying, measure twice, cut once. Mitch had measured 100 times. Now it was almost time to cut. The deposition room was aggressively neutral, gray walls, a long table, uncomfortable chairs, and a court reporter whose fingers flew across her stenotype machine with mechanical efficiency. Regina Roth sat across from Mitch, her suit probably worth more than his truck, her expression radiating predatory confidence. "Mr. Myers, would you say you have a stable income?" "I run my own business. Income varies by project, but yes, it's stable." Mitch kept his answers short, just like Luke had coached him. Regina made a show of consulting her notes. "According to your tax returns, your income dropped by 32% last year. I took 3 months off when Kara had pneumonia. Dawn was working 60-hour weeks. Someone needed to care for our daughter. But you prioritize time off work over financial stability?" "I prioritize my daughter's health." Regina smiled thinly. "How noble. Tell me, Mr. Myers, how many days of work have you missed in the past 6 months due to what you've called childcare conflicts?" Luke interjected, objection, vague and, I'll rephrase. Mr. Myers, isn't it true that your work schedule is unpredictable? That you often work late nights and weekends? That you sometimes have to travel to client sites? I'm a custom furniture maker. Projects have deadlines. But I've never missed a commitment to Kara. Except for the soccer game on October 15th. Mitch felt the trap closing. He had missed that game because Dawn had told him it was rescheduled, then claimed he'd misunderstood when he didn't show up. Kara had been disappointed, and Dawn had used it as evidence of his unreliability. I was given incorrect information about the schedule. By whom? By my wife. Regina's eyebrow arched. So you're saying Ms. Myers deliberately misled you? Sounds like you're blaming others for your shortcomings, Mr. Myers. The deposition continued for 2 more hours. Regina was methodical, building a narrative of Mitch as well-meaning, but ultimately unsuitable, financially unstable, emotionally volatile, unable to provide the structure a 9-year-old girl needed. When it was over, Luke walked Mitch to his truck. She's good, Luke admitted. But we expected that. How are you holding up? I'm fine. Mitch leaned against the truck bed. They're building a house of cards. They just don't know it yet. Luke studied him. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've seen a lot of fathers come through my office. Most of them are angry, broken, or checked out by this point. You're none of those things. I'm angry, Mitch said quietly. I'm just patient. The phone is safe, locked in storage. I've got copies of everything on 3 separate encrypted drives, plus printouts in a safety deposit box. If something happens to me, Leroy has instructions. Luke nodded. Good, because when we play this card, there's no walking it back. Are you sure about the timing? After their case, let them commit to their narrative. Let them feel confident. Mitch met Luke's eyes. Then we burn it all down. The next 2 weeks were psychological warfare disguised as legal procedure. Dawn's team filed motions painting Mitch as negligent, unstable, potentially dangerous. They brought forward witnesses, Gloria's friends, Dawn's co-workers, even Travis Kent, who testified that Dawn had confided in him about her fears for Kara's safety. The testimony was fiction, but it was effective fiction. Gloria had connections to the family court judge, Albert Darling. They'd served on a charity board together. Nothing overtly corrupt, just the subtle influence of social capital. Mitch weathered it all. He showed up for every hearing, documented every exchange, and carefully played the role of concerned father who was just trying his best. He let them see what they expected, a working-class craftsman who was outmatched and outgunned. Meanwhile, he prepared. He met with Kara during his custody time, having conversations that seemed casual but were carefully designed. He didn't badmouth Dawn or Gloria. That would backfire. Instead, he asked questions, listened, and let Kara talk. Mommy says we're going to get a bigger house soon. Kara mentioned one evening while they were building a birdhouse together in his workshop. With a pool. That sounds nice. Grandma Gloria is helping pay for it. She says Daddy's house isn't big enough for a growing girl. Mitch's hands didn't stop moving, carefully gluing dowels into place. What do you think about that? Kara shrugged. This house is good. I like my room here. But Grandma says you can't afford nice things because you work with your hands instead of your brain. There it was. The poison dripped slowly into his daughter's mind. Gloria's influence, shaping Kara's perception of her own father. Kara Bear, you know what I do every day? Make furniture. I solve problems. I look at a piece of wood and I see what it could become. Then I figure out how to make that real. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes weeks, but I never rush because rushing makes weak joints, and weak joints mean the whole thing falls apart. He met her eyes. That takes a lot of brain power. Kara considered this. Grandma Gloria says thinking about money is the smartest kind of thinking. Grandma Gloria is entitled to her opinion. Mitch handed Kara a piece of sandpaper. What do you think? For the first time in weeks, Kara smiled without reservation. I think you're the smartest person I know, Daddy. Later that night, after Kara was asleep, Mitch sat in his workshop and made a phone call. Jerome? It's Mitch Myers. Jerome Lowe was 83 now, retired but still sharp. He'd been more than Mitch's mentor. He'd been the father figure Mitch never had, teaching him not just the craft but the philosophy behind it. Mitch, how's the battle going? Trial starts Monday. I need to ask you a favor. Name it. I need you to testify. Character witness. Just tell them what kind of person I am, what kind of father you've seen me be. Jerome chuckled. Boy, I've been waiting for you to ask. I've got stories that'll make that judge understand exactly who you are. And I've got a few things to say about people who measure a man's worth by his bank account instead of his character. Thank you. Mitch, you're going to win this. I've seen you build things that seemed impossible. You know how to be patient, how to see the whole structure before you place the first piece. Trust your instincts. After hanging up, Mitch pulled out the old Samsung phone one more time. He charged it, backed up the contents, and read through the messages so many times he had sections memorized. The texts between Dawn and Gloria were a roadmap of manipulation, cruelty, and calculated destruction. They discussed Kara like she was a pawn, a tool to hurt Mitch and secure Dawn's future. They mocked Mitch's profession, his income, his low-class family. They strategized about how to alienate Kara from her father, how to make her prefer Gloria's mansion to Mitch's apartment. But worse than any of that were the messages about Kara herself. Dawn, sometimes I wish I could just leave her with him permanently. The whole mother thing is exhausting. Gloria, you can't. We need to establish you as the primary parent. Once you have custody, we can hire help. You won't have to do the actual parenting. Dawn, she's so clingy lately. Travis says it's because I'm enabling her dependence. Gloria, Travis is right. You need to toughen her up. She's getting too attached to that rabbit toy. Throw it away. Dawn, she'll cry. Gloria, she needs to learn the world doesn't revolve around her feelings. Make her sleep without it. Message after message revealing that beneath the performance of loving mother and devoted grandmother, Dawn and Gloria saw Kara as an inconvenience, a chess piece, a burden to be managed. There were messages about Mitch too, strategies to make him look unstable, discussions about provoking him into angry outbursts, plans to isolate him from Kara. Gloria, keep documenting everything. Every small mistake. We'll bury him with 1,000 paper cuts. Dawn, what if he doesn't make mistakes? Gloria, then we create them. Change the pickup time and say he's late. Tell Kara he forgot about her events. Make him the villain in small ways until it becomes the truth. It was comprehensive, calculated, evil, and it was about to become public record. The courtroom was smaller than Mitch had expected, more intimate than the TV drama suggested. Judge Albert Darling presided from a bench, a stern man in his 60s with silver hair and an expression that suggested he'd seen every trick in the book. Dawn sat with Regina Roth at the plaintiff's table, looking vulnerable and maternal in a conservative blue dress. Gloria was in the gallery behind her, radiating supportive grandmother energy. Travis Kent was absent. Even Regina wasn't stupid enough to bring the affair partner to family court. Mitch sat with Luke at the defense table. He wore his only suit, a charcoal gray number he'd bought for his wedding. Leroy was in the gallery along with Jerome Lowe and a handful of other character witnesses. All rise. The trial began. Regina Roth presented Dawn's case first, and it was masterful. She portrayed Dawn as a devoted mother who'd sacrificed her own needs to care for Kara, who'd only started working because Mitch's income was unreliable, who was simply trying to provide stability in an unstable situation. Dawn testified, her voice breaking at all the right moments. She talked about Kara's tears after rough transitions from Mitch's apartment. She discussed her fears about Mitch's emotional volatility. She painted herself as a victim of a difficult marriage trying to protect her daughter. Gloria testified next, the picture of concerned grandmother. She spoke about Kara's happiness when she stayed at the mansion, the structure and routine Dawn provided, the opportunities Gloria could offer for Kara's future, private school, tutors, enrichment programs. My daughter is the only stable parent that child has, Gloria said firmly. Mitch Myers is a good man in his way, but he's not equipped to be a primary parent. That boy needs his mother. His father is. She paused, letting the weight settle. Worthless in this situation. Judge Darling nodded slightly, taking notes. Regina called several more witnesses, a child psychologist who'd met with Kara twice and assessed her as more bonded with her mother, teachers who confirmed Dawn's involvement in school events, neighbors who testified to Dawn's dedication. By the end of day 2, it looked grim. Luke had cross-examined aggressively, but Regina's case was comprehensive. Even Luke seemed worried. "Tomorrow we present our side," Luke told Mitch in the hallway during recess. "Jerome will be strong. Your brothers will be strong. We'll show them who you really are. And then we wait for the right moment." Luke glanced toward the courtroom, where Dawn and Gloria were accepting sympathetic hugs from their supporters. "You sure about this?" "Never been more sure of anything." Day 3. Luke presented Mitch's case with the same care Mitch applied to his furniture. Deliberate, structured, building towards something larger. Jerome Lowe testified first, and he was magnificent. At 83, he commanded the room with the authority of someone who'd lived a full life and had no patience for nonsense. "I've known Mitch Myers for 20 years, Jerome said. "Trained him myself. And I can tell you without hesitation that he's one of the finest men I've ever met. Patient, dedicated, thoughtful. The kind of person who sees a project through, who doesn't cut corners, who builds things that last." "Mr. Lowe, in your professional opinion, would you say Mr. Myers has a stable career?" Luke asked. "Stable? Son, in this economy, there's no such thing as stable. But what Mitch has is better. He has skill, reputation, and integrity. Those things don't disappear when the market shifts. People seek him out because he's the best at what he does." Regina Roth cross-examined, trying to shake Jerome's testimony, but he was unshakable. He'd been in courtrooms before, had testified in legal cases about craftsmanship and safety. He knew how to hold his ground. Leroy testified next about Mitch's relationship with Kara, the weekends they spent together as a family, the way Mitch prioritized his daughter above everything else. "My brother built that house for his family," Leroy said. "Every room designed with Kara in mind. He's the most dedicated father I've ever seen." More witnesses followed. Clients who spoke to Mitch's character, friends who'd watched him parent, Kara's soccer coach who testified that Mitch had never missed a game until Dawn changed the schedule without telling him. By mid-afternoon, the scales had shifted slightly. Not enough to win, but enough to make it close. Then Luke called Mitch to the stand. For 2 hours, Mitch testified about his love for Kara, his commitment to co-parenting, his willingness to work with Dawn despite their differences. He remained calm even when Regina tried to provoke him, stayed focused even when she brought up the affair as evidence of the emotional trauma he'd inflicted on the family by refusing to leave the house. "Mr. Myers," Regina asked, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "isn't it true that you've struggled with anger issues since your divorce?" "No. You've never raised your voice to your daughter?" "I've never raised my voice to my daughter. But you've raised your voice to your wife." "After I discovered her affair, yes, we had loud arguments. But never in front of Kara." Regina shuffled her papers. "How can you expect to provide stability when your own income varies month to month? When your work takes you away from home, when you live in a 2-bedroom apartment instead of a proper house?" "I provide stability by being present, consistent, and loving. Money doesn't make someone a good parent. Being there does." It was a strong answer, but Regina had more ammunition. She spent another hour attacking Mitch's finances, his schedule, his living situation. By the time he stepped down, he was exhausted. Court adjourned for the day. Tomorrow would be closing arguments, and then the judge's decision. Luke and Mitch walked to the parking lot in silence. "You did good," Luke finally said. "Really good. But I'm not going to lie. This is close. Too close. Darling's got a relationship with Gloria, and the mother's advantage is real. I know. So tomorrow, during my closing, I'm going to bring up the phone. We'll introduce the texts. Let the judge see who they really are." Mitch shook his head. "No, Mitch, not from you. Trust me." Luke studied him. "You have a plan?" "I have a plan." The courtroom was packed for closing arguments. Dawn and Gloria sat together, confident. Regina Roth looked like a general who'd already won the war, just waiting for the formalities. Luke gave his closing first. It was good, passionate, logical, hitting all the key points about Mitch's character and parenting. But Mitch could see it wasn't enough. Judge Darling listened politely, but his body language suggested his mind was already made up. Regina stood for her closing, and she went for the kill. Your Honor, this case is simple. Kara Myers deserves stability, structure, and a primary parent who can provide consistent care. Dawn Myers is that parent. She has the financial resources, the support system, and the maternal bond that a 9-year-old girl desperately needs. Regina gestured toward Mitch. Mr. Myers is not a bad father, but being a good father doesn't mean being the primary custodian. He can have visitation, he can remain in Kara's life, but the evidence is clear that Dawn Myers should have primary custody. She paused for effect. My client is the only stable parent this child has. That girl needs her mother. Her father, while well-intentioned, is simply not equipped to provide what Kara needs to thrive. Gloria smiled from the gallery, a small victorious expression. Judge Darling began to nod, his pen moving across his notepad. This was the moment. The trap had been built piece by careful piece. Now, Mitch needed to spring it. He leaned toward Luke and whispered, "Let Kara speak." Luke's eyes widened. "What? Trust me. Let Kara speak." Luke stood. "Your Honor, before you rule, we have one more witness. Kara Myers would like to address the court." Regina shot to her feet. "Objection. This is highly irregular. The child hasn't been on the witness list and—" "Your Honor," Luke interrupted, "Kara has the right to be heard in her own custody case. It's her future we're deciding." Judge Darling frowned. "Ms. Roth, Your Honor, this is clearly a stunt designed to manipulate. I'll allow it." The judge's voice was firm. "If the child wishes to speak, I'll hear her." Dawn's face went pale. Gloria leaned forward, gripping the railing. The bailiff brought Kara into the courtroom. She looked small in her yellow dress, clutching something in her hands. The stuffed rabbit Mitch had given her when she was 2, the one Dawn and Gloria had discussed throwing away in their texts. She walked to the witness stand, and the bailiff helped her step up. Judge Darling's expression softened. "Hello, Kara. You don't have to be nervous. Do you understand why you're here?" "Yes, sir." Kara's voice was small but clear. "You're deciding where I'm going to live." "That's right. And you wanted to tell me something?" Kara nodded. She looked at Mitch, and he gave her an encouraging smile. Then she turned to the judge and held up Dawn's old Samsung phone. "Your Honor, can I read what Mommy and Grandma text about me?" The courtroom went silent. Dawn stood up, her chair scraping loudly. "Kara, sweetie, that's private." "Mrs. Myers, sit down," Judge Darling ordered. His eyes were on Kara now, sharp and focused. "Kara, what do you have there?" "Mommy's old phone. She threw it away, but Daddy saved it. He showed me the messages. He said I should know the truth about what they really think of me." Regina was scrambling. "Your Honor, this is coaching. This is manipulation of a minor." But Judge Darling held up his hand. "Let the child speak." Kara opened the phone, her small fingers navigating to the message thread. Mitch had bookmarked the worst ones for her, had prepared her for this moment during their last custody weekend. "This one is from March," Kara said, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath. "Mommy wrote, 'Sometimes I wish I could just leave her with him permanently. The whole mother thing is exhausting.'" Dawn made a sound like she'd been slapped. Kara continued, "And Grandma Gloria wrote back, 'You can't. We need to establish you as the primary parent. Once you have custody, we can hire help. You won't have to do the actual parenting.'" The courtroom erupted. Regina tried to object, but her voice was drowned out. Gloria's face had gone from victorious to horrified. "Another one from April," Kara said. Tears started to stream down her face, but her voice not breaking. "Mommy says she's so clingy lately. Travis says it's because I'm enabling her dependence. And Grandma says Travis is right. You need to toughen her up. She's getting too attached to that rabbit toy. Throw it away." Kara hugged the rabbit to her chest. "They wanted to throw away Mr. Whiskers. Daddy saved him too." Judge Darling's expression had transformed from judicial neutrality to barely contained fury. "I'd like to see that phone, please." The bailiff took it from Kara and handed it to the judge. Dawn had collapsed in her chair, her hands over her face. Gloria was standing now, trying to speak, but no words were coming out. "There's more," Kara whispered. "About Daddy too. Mean things. Plans to make him look bad. Grandma told Mommy to lie about the soccer game, so Daddy would look like he didn't care. Regina Roth was frantically conferring with Dawn, but the damage was catastrophic. Years of careful manipulation, thousands of dollars in legal strategy, all incinerated by a 9-year-old girl with a 3-year-old phone. Judge Darling scrolled through the messages, his jaw tightening with each swipe. Finally, he looked up. Mrs. Myers, Mrs. Black. I'm going to read a few of these aloud for the record. What followed was 15 minutes of devastating revelation. Messages discussing strategies to alienate Kara from Mitch. Conversations about using Kara as a tool to secure Dawn's financial future. Gloria explicitly stating that Kara was means to an end in controlling Dawn's life and ensuring her daughter didn't waste her potential on manual labor. There were messages mocking Kara's anxiety, dismissing her emotional needs, discussing medication to make her easier to manage. Messages about hiring au pairs and boarding schools so Dawn could focus on her career and relationship with Travis. The worst was a message from Gloria to Dawn after a particularly difficult custody exchange. Stop crying. The child is fine. She's just manipulating you like she manipulates Mitch. She learned it from him. We need to break that bond completely. A few more months of our strategy, and she'll forget she ever wanted to spend time with him. When Judge Darling finished reading, the silence was absolute. Dawn was sobbing openly. Gloria looked like a statue, her face frozen in an expression of shock and rage. Your Honor, Regina began, but Darling cut her off with a look. Counselor, I suggest you say nothing else. In fact, I suggest you consider your professional obligations very carefully in the coming days. He turned to Kara. Sweetheart, you're very brave. You can step down now, and you can keep Mr. Whiskers. Nobody's taking him away. Kara climbed down and ran to Mitch. He caught her, holding her tight. Judge Darling looked at Dawn and Gloria with undisguised contempt. In 30 years on the bench, I've seen a lot of ugly custody cases. I've seen parents use their children as weapons. I've seen manipulation, lies, and games. But I have never seen anything as calculated, cruel, and fundamentally twisted as what I've just read. He held up the phone. This will be entered as evidence. And Mrs. Myers, Mrs. Black, you should both retain criminal counsel. I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation into possible child abuse, fraud, and perjury charges. Dawn's head snapped up. What? Your Honor, please. You stood in my courtroom and lied. Repeatedly. You painted yourself as a devoted mother while actively discussing how to minimize your actual parenting responsibilities. You conspired to alienate a child from her father. You manipulated court proceedings with false testimony. Darling turned to Mitch. Mr. Myers, I'm granting you full custody of Kara Myers, effective immediately. Mrs. Myers will have supervised visitation only, pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. Mrs. Black is prohibited from any contact with a minor child until further notice. Gloria finally found her voice. You can't do this. I have rights as a grandmother. You have no rights. Darling's voice thundered through the courtroom. You are a toxic presence who has caused irreparable harm to this child. If I had my way, you'd never see her again. As it stands, I'm ordering a restraining order. If you come within 500 feet of Kara Myers, you will be arrested. He slammed his gavel. This court is adjourned. The aftermath was chaos. Regina Roth grabbed her briefcase and left without a word to Dawn. Gloria stormed out, surrounded by curious onlookers who'd witnessed her complete destruction. Dawn sat at the table, shaking, as 2 police officers approached to discuss the criminal investigation. Luke pumped Mitch's hand. I've never seen anything like that. Never. You orchestrated that perfectly. Mitch held Kara close. I just gave her the truth. She did the rest. Jerome Lowe approached, his eyes bright. That's my boy. You saw the whole structure before you made the first cut. Patience and precision. Leroy clapped Mitch on the shoulder. You're a goddamn genius. I'm a father, Mitch corrected. That's all I've ever been. They left the courthouse together. Outside, news vans were already gathering. Someone had leaked the story, and it was too dramatic to ignore. Wealthy real estate mogul and her daughter exposed as manipulative abusers in custody case. It would be regional news by tonight. National news by tomorrow. Gloria Black's carefully cultivated reputation was finished. Dawn would face criminal charges. Travis Kent's executive coaching business would collapse once his involvement came out. Regina Roth's 83% success rate had just taken a catastrophic hit. But Mitch didn't care about any of that. He cared about the little girl holding his hand, the one who'd been brave enough to speak truth to power, the one who was finally safe. Daddy, Kara looked up at him. Can we go home now? Our real home. Yeah, Kara Bear. We can go home. 3 months later, Mitch stood in his workshop, applying the final coat of varnish to a custom dining table. Kara sat at the workbench, carefully sanding a jewelry box she was making for a friend's birthday. The criminal charges against Dawn had been reduced to a plea deal, probation, mandatory therapy, community service. She lost her job at Gloria's company. Travis had dumped her the day the story went national. She was living in a small apartment across town, working retail, and attending supervised visits with Kara every other Saturday. The visits were awkward, painful. Dawn was trying, genuinely trying, but years of damage couldn't be undone in a few hours of supervised conversation. Kara was polite but distant. She called Mitch's house home and referred to Dawn's apartment as where Mom lives. Gloria had vanished from public life entirely. Her real estate empire was under investigation for various ethical violations that had come to light during the criminal proceedings. Her reputation was destroyed. She tried to reach out to Kara once, a letter that arrived despite the restraining order, begging for forgiveness. Mitch had given the letter to Kara's therapist, who'd helped her decide whether to read it. Kara had chosen not to. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. The phone, the old Samsung, had become Exhibit A in the criminal case and was now evidence in several civil suits. Dawn's lawyer, Regina Roth, was facing a bar investigation for suborning perjury. The family court system in their city was implementing new oversight procedures. But Mitch didn't follow those stories closely. He'd built his trap, executed his plan, and won his daughter back. The rest was just noise. Daddy, is this smooth enough? Kara held up the jewelry box. Mitch ran his hand over the wood. Perfect. You got good instincts. Ready for the final assembly. They worked together in comfortable silence, father and daughter building something that would last. Outside, the sun set over the house Mitch had built, the home they defended, the life they'd reclaimed. Jerome Lowe had been right all along. The strongest structures required careful planning, patience, and the ability to see 10 steps ahead. Mitch had seen exactly what needed to be done. He'd measured 100 times, waited for the perfect moment, and made a single, devastating cut. Gloria and Dawn had underestimated him because he worked with his hands instead of wearing expensive suits. They'd seen a craftsman and assumed he lacked sophistication, strategy, vision. They'd forgotten that building something beautiful required seeing the end before you began. Required understanding materials, respecting limitations, and knowing exactly when to apply pressure. Mitch had built a cathedral of justice, brick by patient brick. And when it was complete, when every piece was in place, he'd let his daughter ring the bells. The sound had brought their whole rotten structure crashing down. Kara finished assembling the jewelry box and held it up proudly. Done. Beautiful work, Kara Bear. Your friend going to love it. She hugged him, her small arms tight around his waist. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, sweetheart. Always. In the end, that's what mattered. Not the victory in court, not the revenge against Gloria and Dawn, not the vindication of his character. Just this, a father and daughter, building things together in a workshop full of sawdust and possibility, creating something lasting from raw materials and love. Mitch Myers had won. Not because he destroyed his enemies, though he had. Not because he'd been proven right, though he had. He'd won because Kara was home, safe, and knew without question that her father would always protect her, always fight for her, always see her as the most important thing he'd ever build. That was worth more than all of Gloria's mansions and Dawn's designer clothes and Regina's legal victories combined. That was everything. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, Consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.